feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We're brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at you late Wednesday night after the Wolves 121-113 win over the Phoenix Suns. Myself and Kyle Theige, we both made the trip out here to Phoenix for this game. So we decided we're going to do another one of those night of podcasts like we did in New York a couple weeks ago. So it'll just be our immediate reactions to the very chaotic Wolves win tonight. Kyle, I feel like if there's ever a game that I needed a little bit more time to figure out how to put together an outline for a podcast, it would be this game. But we're gonna try and cover everything. We got some clips from the locker room afterwards. Where do you want to start?
I mean, the podcast itself should just reflect what we just watched for 48 minutes, and that was, again, maybe John Krasinski tweeted this out. I thought it was really well said, that the win against Denver the other night was their best performance, but tonight's game was their best win. I mean, I kind of made this joke earlier to you, but like, it was Stefan from Saturday Night Live, where it's like this game had a little bit of everything. It had a coach ejection. It had some failed challenges. Jaden pokes Booker in the face late on. Jaylen Clark, welcome to the party. And Red Panda was there. So it was a big night that started out. I mean, those first, 12, 24 minutes kind of looked reminiscent against a good team of what you watched the other night at Target Center against a really bad Atlanta Hawks team. But then Finch's ejection inspired play. And then, to me, selfishly, what you find out post-game about what took place this morning that kind of led to all this.
Yeah, so I think we should start, if we want to start talking about Finch and the injection, we should start with Atlanta and the game on Monday, where the Wolves are playing an extremely shorthanded Hawks team, right? And in the second half, they just mailed it in. And Finch, after the game, to us, called it a completely unacceptable second half of basketball. And it was interesting in the locker room afterwards. Ant was like, we just kind of missed some shots, which was, it was the most I've ever seen Ant like directly in contradiction of Finch, who he's very supportive of.
Yep.
And or has been the entirety of the time. But it was kind of like, Finch thought this was a really big issue, and Ant was almost perturbed by us like asking the questions that Finch, but it was the things that Finch said. So then they fly out here to Phoenix, and then apparently this morning have a film session, whereas Nikhil Alexander Walker put it. he said Finch woke up choosing violence. And so we kind of asked all the players if this was the maddest that they've seen Finch, and Julius Randle's like, should have seen him this morning. Nikhil's like, it woke up choosing violence. But I thought Ant's answer was the one that really stood out to me, because it was a change on his tune from Monday, which is an important tune to have changed. Just like I thought it was bad after the Boston game when Ant was like, or the Boston game where he was upset that they're double teaming me. It's like, well, but your teammates made 55% of your threes. In this game, it doesn't really make sense for you to be upset in this instance. And I just thought that his answer in the locker room about the film session and understanding what Finch talked about was really encouraging. Here's Ant.
Everything he said was totally right. I mean, pretty much like, he pretty much was just basically telling us, like, how much do you care about the game, and the clips that the coaches have for us. I mean, we can't say we care about the game at all with the stuff that we watch. So, like, when he was getting on us, especially me, like, when you're growing up, like, to be an adult, like a young adult, like, you always, like, want to think about, like, he trying me, I want to say something back, like, he trying my manhood, or, like, but when you think about it, like, when you get in the room, like, after film today, when I got in the room and thought about it, I'm like, man, I would have been a fool in film to say something back. You know what I'm saying? Like, he ain't trying my manhood. I really must not care about the game, because the clips on there, they look bad. You know what I'm saying? So I can't be buddy with somebody like, I should have said something back. Like, nah, he was right. So I definitely felt some type of way about it, and I told my best buddy about it, like, hey, Finch got on my butt today, but he was right. You know what I'm saying? So I had to tighten up.
That seemed that on Monday when we talked to you after that game, you were kind of like, I don't necessarily see exactly where he's coming from. You said you just felt like we were missing shots, but like, is this kind of one of those things where maybe it does take a film session for some of that stuff to
For
to
sure,
set in?
most definitely. I mean, yeah.
So, what'd you think of Jaylen?
Oh my God, I told him they call Akil Carter Crime Stopper. He gonna take that nickname because he's handling. I'm not gonna lie, man. I seen him. He was impressive today, man. On defense, he was impressive. I'm not gonna lie.
He said his help like guarding you. It's been a big thing.
We've been guarding me since he been healthy. So it's definitely probably helped him a lot. Because he looked good tonight, man.
You guys have so many perimeter defenders, and against a team like Phoenix,
you need
that,
yeah,
right? And then it seemed like you really stepped up there as well. To is part of you being like, hey, if I'm doing that, then everybody.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that was the film. That was like 25% of my terribleness on the film session. Like, it was my defense, and then like it was other categories. But so I just I really slept on it. Like, bro, what am I doing? Like, I really got to be better because like I can't be the leader and be not doing this. And like, I'd rather take a playoff on I'd rather take a playoff on offense than take a playoff on you know what I'm saying on defense. Then they got a clip of me like not sprint back on defense and jogging and my man out sprint me. Like, ain't nobody in the league should be sprinting, getting from end to end faster than me if I really want to.
So you woke up and chose violence too?
Nah, it wasn't that, man. I just was like, you know how you, like I said, you look in the mirror and like, he right. Yeah. You always want to say like, have a rebuttal, like, man, he tried me, but he was right. So
how often does this happen during the course of a season with him? And because it seems like you can't go maybe that intense all the time, but.
Oh, with me, he's that intense all the time. Sure. Yeah, for sure. But nah, that's my dog, so I don't take it no way. I mean, but like I'm not gonna say when I was growing because I'm not old, but it's my fifth year. But like my second, third year, like I was like, man, he trying me. Like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Going back telling my buddies he trying me, but now I'm like, nah, he ain't trying me. Like, he right. I gotta be better. So,
Kyle, we were sitting next to a scout in the game in the media section, and he's like, oh, you guys get to see this stuff from Ant every night, because it was when Ant went on that big run in the second quarter. And I said to him, I was like, yeah, we can see some of the bad stuff every night too. And to me, what I'm saying that is, it's like, it comes from a place of once that bad stuff goes away, or the more of it that goes away, the stuff that Ant's recognizing, in himself here in that quote, it's another level up, or you go from being the 15th best player to the 14th, it's up and up and up from there. And I think where Finch deserves credit is early on, he knew there was, we talk about a lot of like meat on the bone. There's a lot of fat on Ant's game that he had to and has to trim still. But the faster he does that, and the more of that he does, there's I don't even know how many more levels there are. He's already one of the best players in the game, and often has lapses of focus and understanding. And I understand that he's only 23, but Finch is trying to make it. So when he is, I don't even know, 20, whatever age we want to put it, that he's in a place to be everything that he can be. And I think this is Finch's way of pushing it. And I think, credit to Ant too for having kind of that self-awareness or awareness of the situation to be like, oh, he is right. And he actually is, because of this is what I'm doing on film that is not right. This is the effort I'm not putting in there. Like, I do think Finch does a good job of pointing that out to him and challenging him, which my read on it is that is probably the type of coaching that Ant does need. So like you said, it's that relationship is extremely important.
You got to let me ISO for a sec.
Yeah.
But
you want about 3 minutes and 32 seconds, like that clip from Ant, or what?
I really sincerely mean this. Like, I think like Wolves Twitter is awesome because it's just a bunch of degenerates and fans and basketball nerds who have been through the mud and have finally, after all this investment, tasted something last year that was like almost scared. Like, I don't want to go back to what it used to be. So I get it. But I just want to say this because I do dip in every now and then and I drop into a game and I go in the locker room. A lot of that's not real in terms of, and I don't want to sound like a hater, but like the Fire Finch crowd and all that stuff, man, that is not what is going on internally, whether it be with ownership or the front office. I'm just telling you, man, you got to take my word. Like, this team loves that guy. And I don't know if there's a ceiling on this relationship or this coaching staff or whatever. I don't know. Like that kind of plays itself out. But it's not because they're buddies. When I say this stuff, like the relationship between the head coach of the team and the best player, the franchise player on the team, is fucking incredible. Like, and that what I took away from that, and I've been saying this to you all year, like, I don't know if this is inspired by Chris Hine writing this book that's now on pre-sale, go to Amazon, but I just wonder if this year, this gap year that not everyone loves, is the story that we'll look back on the DVD, as I say, will be just about the next chapter of this kid growing up and now being like a vet to Rob Dillingham and be like, man, I was in your shoes before. Like, just trust me. The way he gets his teammates involved, the way he kind of talks them up. I mean, every time he loses his mind post game, his teammates respond, right? The Kings game, then they play really good defense. The I don't want to get double thing. And all of a sudden he's averaging 36 and 6 on these games. So what I think is cool is that, and you hit this out of the park with your follow-up question, but he came on after that Hawks game and was like, it wasn't like nasty, but it's like, I don't see what the coach saw. Like, I just thought we missed shots. And
it was a weird tone, man. It was a weird tone. Yeah.
He copped to it tonight. I was like, yep, this morning they showed me with 62 seconds left, we're up 6, and I'm just kind of walking around because I know we're going to beat the Hawks. And I guarantee you they brought that play up today, and he didn't have a rebuttal. He's like, I got to play better. And, this thing, no matter how many good players it has, and Flo and, young guys and Rob and Jay, whatever, it just goes now as Ant goes. And in that second half, I mean, the energy that he brought, the way that he like kind of wrapped Finch around and said, I got you, and get out of here. I'll take care of this. But then just the energy he played with on the dunks and wanting to, I think at halftime, I don't know if it was a coaching thing or he came up to him, but I think he switched on to Booker, kind of negated him. It's just that 3 minutes to me is what I'll remember from a chaotic, really fun night. No offense to Jaylen Clark, we should talk about, but I'll remember that because that to me is what the best teams have. The best player and the coach are on the same wavelength, even if the message from one guy to the other isn't always roses.
It does remind me of the playmaking stuff from the playoffs last season, where it was just all of a sudden it clicked, like something clicked in for him.
And it clicks a little later all the time. But guess what? As he said too, he's like, I'm grown, but I'm not an adult yet. Or like, I'm 23 years old. Like, it just takes him. He's not Luka, right? Like, he wasn't playing meaningful games at 15 years old.
You're right. Yeah.
He wasn't really playing meaningful games until he was, you could argue, 9 months ago. So it's just kind of clicking for him a little later, but that's why you continue no matter what the stock price is.
But he is 23. Like, it's just that he's been here for a while. So some of the stuff you're like, you're still
it's 5 years. You're like, you're still doing that, but it's like he's 23.
Yeah, exactly. Do you want to? What element of the chaos do we want to get into next?
I mean, I don't know how this was all about the way they played. Another win. I think they're 2-0 this season. 6 straight wins against the Phoenix Suns, a team that's in the news a lot. And we'll talk a little trade deadline stuff, but like, they're trying to make this move. And every time they run into the Minnesota Timberwolves, they just run into a dead end.
Right.
But
yeah, actually, let me do something on that. Like, I think there was basketball reasons for the chaos in that too, because like the first 100%. Half, it was, the Wolves are cycling through these rotations. Like, Luka Garza's out there, and then the Suns go small, and then Luka never plays again. Josh Minot's out there for 12 seconds and blows a defensive assignment and literally gets pulled after 12 seconds. It was a game. I don't know. There's something about the Suns. And we could talk about what those things are. That does inspire some chaos. That the 3 wings that they have kind of force your hand to be playing 3 perimeter defenders at all times, which is part of why Jaylen Clark entered this. But, Jaden McDaniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Anthony Edwards need to be guarding, those three players. They force your hand to play those type of guys. They were also playing really fast in the first half. But then they also sometimes, when they are playing bigger, they're like really big. It's like Plumlee or Richards, and you kind of have to have Rudy out there for. So they have this style that just yanks you in different directions. And quite frankly, in the first half, I thought like the Wolves were kind of chasing it a little bit. Like the Suns would do this, the Wolves would adjust, and they would move it. The Suns would move into something else, and the Wolves just kind of felt a step behind that. But I do think they found a rhythm. Like, okay, this isn't a Luka Garza game. What we're actually going to do, because Naz Reid's out, is when they go small, we're going to play 4 guards. And I mean, there was times out there where they had Mike Conley, Rob Dillingham, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Ant out there next to Rudy. And so that wasn't just because Naz Reid wasn't healthy. You know what I mean? Like there's things about how Phoenix plays, their roster construction and their style of play that kind of forced a chaos relative to what we're used to seeing from the Wolves. The Wolves are pretty like straightforward. I track the rotations and stuff, and it's like pretty much the same every game. And this one was like Jaylen Clark, Luka Garza, Jaylen Clark, come on in. And I think, and shout out to Mike Nori too, because he ran it in the second half. I think they did a good job of understanding the chaos that Phoenix was providing, and they kind of caught up to it, used the spirit or energy or whatever it was from Finch, but they had to get the basketball right in this matchup as well. And I think that the biggest thing was allowing them being comfortable playing some weird lineups, because playing Phoenix demanded that.
Yeah, and again, this is a Minnesota Timberwolves team that we're well aware could wake up on Thursday morning, not choose violence, go to Salt Lake City on a back-to-back and blow it, and blow a lot of the momentum they've built in this kind of stretch of basketball. That could happen. But also, too, if you want to be a glass half full person, the way they beat Denver was just, we're going to bully you. Like physicality, we have a style, we have some defense, but we can score like crazy against those certain matchups. And then tonight, I mean, again,
they're really like offensively, physically imposing against Denver.
Yeah. And then tonight against the Suns, again, it's one game. If you're Phoenix, you're a fan, you're coaching staff, you're like, let's throw that one away, whatever. But I mean, to me, it was like a demoralizing loss, because like you said, Phoenix tries a lot of different stuff. Bud is a really good coach. And every time they threw different things out there, the Wolves just countered with, like you said, Luka Garza, no minutes in the second half, but first half, I mean, it was just him and Rob Dillingham running pick and roll, and he got Luka some good looks. Josh had, 12 seconds, which I think we could maybe talk about when we talk about Jaylen Clark. And then Jaylen Clark had his number called. There was, from my understanding, no real pregame conversation about it.
Let's grab the first. I want to do a whole thing on Jaylen. So
he deserves his own break.
Yeah, he does. Today's show is brought to you by Watermelon Water, WTRMLN. You take the vowels out of there is how their branding works. Watermelon Water sent Kyle and I both packages of this, and we've kind of all January been drinking them. I don't know about you. I already got through my whole box of them. It is, we could tell you a little bit more about some specifics of it, but my favorite thing, as I've been saying every week, is it literally tastes like biting into a watermelon in the summer, and you're getting all of the benefits of that you would like from coconut water, or something that's actually replenishing your electrolytes quickly. You have any watermelon water thoughts?
I miss it, because I didn't tell you this yet, but I ended dry January a little early the other day. So I wake up every morning wishing I had some watermelon water down here in the desert. But it's like you said before, to me, I was a Gatorade guy, I was a Powerade guy. It is as good, if not better. It's just a really cool story. And again, we always want people to support those that support us. And it's a really fantastic product. So if you haven't tried it yet, go out there, get some, throw it in your gym bag, bring it to work, whatever. It's awesome.
Yeah, and you can order it for delivery through Amazon or Instacart. Watermelon water is at Whole Foods, so you can get that through Amazon grocery delivery. And then if you do grocery delivery through Target, you can just throw it in your bag as well. It's on the your cart as well. It's on the screen here. You can see, you can find it in the show notes again. It's called Watermelon Water, WTR MLN WTR. Kyle, today's show is also brought to you by Treasure Island Resort and Casino. I'm going to find my little clip here. Maybe I'm not. Brought to you by Treasure Island Resort and Casino. And we want to let you know that the KFAN Power Trip is doing their takeover at Treasure Island on Thursday and Friday, February 6th and 7th. They're giving away 2 trips to Vegas for the Super Bowl that same weekend. The kickoff party is in the Island Event Center on Thursday, February 6th from 7 to 9 p.m. with a free live initials game event going on. And then they kind of keep the party going on Saturday. Chris Hockey's performing. They're doing a live airing of the Power Trip morning show at 5:30 a.m. to 9. Go to ticasino.com and check out what is going on with this K-Fan thing. I think it is going to be awesome. And just, I mean, you literally have multiple days when you can go down there. Go to ticasino.com to learn more about the KFAN Power Trip takeover going on at Treasure Island. Let's talk a little Jaylen Clark. What do you want to say? You got something?
I mean, it's Jaylen Clark podium game. I mean, what
Jaylen Clark podium.
It was Jaylen Clark's first real basketball minutes. I mean, again, he's played in garbage time before, but as you reminded me, it was the first time Jaylen Clark has ever played alongside Anthony Edwards
Or anyone.
or anyone,
Yeah,
really.
anyone in the rotation.
Which again, post game was interesting to find out kind of how Jaylen has continued to level up as a defender. A lot of that is credited to Anthony Edwards. But just a cool story. And I'm a sucker for all that shit, but he was the best defensive player in college basketball. And then he tore his Achilles. And that surgery and that whole area of modern medicine has really developed. But a lot of times still you tear your Achilles and it's kind of like a death sentence. And ironically, tonight he gets to go up against someone that he's mentioned before, kind of like looked up to, Kevin Durant, who has torn his Achilles and come back to be as good, if not a better player. So it was just cool because in the moment, what happened in the Josh Minot moment I wanted to mention was, Rob's in the rotation now because there's no Dante. Josh starts the second quarter, gets a little stint, and 12 seconds in gets subbed out because what does he do? What Finch asked him to do in the media a couple of days ago. He gets burned backdoor, loses his assignment. I'm sure it's something, man, that today when everyone's getting yelled at film session, I'm sure Josh was on there too. Yeah. And Josh never saw the court again. And I don't think Jaylen Clark had any idea, or the coaching staff had any idea that Jaylen Clark was going to play tonight. And he did, and he played so well for kind of being thrown into the deep end.
Here's Jaylen Clark. We got to talk to him after the game.
It was funny because today, this is the first time I didn't do my pregame routine. Because before my cousin kept telling me he could run it under a 7-minute mile. So I'm out there at the track watching him run, or in the gym watching him run a 7-minute mile on the treadmill before. I didn't take no pregame nap, just showed up. If you know what I mean? So when he said my name, I'm like, Jaden already down there. He said Jaylen. I was like, oh, if you know what I mean. So it was dope.
Just the energy. It was a crazy game. I mean, that was just like a crazy game. But specifically after the Finch ejection, what did that do for an energy standpoint?
Yeah, I think it's always when your coach shows he cares to that extent. As a player, you got to respond and meet it at that level. So I think the energy rose triple-fold once he went ahead and got ejected. But super dope being out there. Like I said, the guys. I feel like this is probably a real complete game. Everybody had a good night, offensively, defensively, and that's a hell of a team in the other locker room. So
it was a team you guys played last year too.
I know.
That's probably some of the juice, right?
Yeah, so it's fun to get out there, especially in this little rivalry, whatever you want to call it.
Do you think he I haven't really thought about this. Do you think he plays again, or is this going to be like the Wendell Moore?
Way to go, Finch.
Yeah, right.
He's a new Wendell Moore. I just think, again, by the way, Nickeil Alexander-Walker will hold this title as long as he's in Minnesota as being I think the best guy to talk to. But Jaylen Clark is a really interesting kid, and this is the first. You don't really get media post game stuff with a guy who plays in garbage time. So, and again, I don't know. Does Jaylen Clark play tomorrow? I don't know, but I will say, and again, Rob has way more equity built into him and the price to get him. He's going to be a focal point of this franchise moving forward. Jaylen Clark is more in that Leonard Miller, Josh Minot, Luka Garza range. But what I will say this, for a team that has figured out, whether it be just this season again or last season or like under the Finch regime, their identity now is defense and toughness. And I watched Devin Booker tonight call for a screen to get Jaden McDaniels off of him. And he got switched on to Jaylen Clark.
Mm-hmm.
And then he called for another screen. And he got switched on to Nickeil Alexander-Walker.
Tough, dude.
And then he somehow got by him. And guess who was at the rim? Rudy Gobert. And Ant was out there just clapping the whole time while everyone else was playing good defense. But that is a lethal fucking 5-man unit that if you just want to experiment with a little bit to throw out there, I mean, that just sucks your soul out of it. It was reminiscent. It will never be as pretty as that one possession in the playoffs that you remember last year in Phoenix, but it had shades of that. And if Jaylen can give you that, the offense is just going to take a whole offseason to figure out. He has a lot of work to do with his jump shot. But again, that kid got thrown into the deep end with no warning, no pregame ritual, and played his ass off. And again, they don't win that game without Jaylen Clark and what he did in those minutes.
I know like people don't think Phoenix is any good, and and in a lot of ways they aren't. They've been super inconsistent, or they do what they did tonight a lot, which is run out of gas. It's not my point. My point is, like, you do need to have a lot of perimeter defenders to be able to guard them and to be able to handle that team. Like, even their shortcomings aside, and the Wolves really are loaded there. And I mean, and Dante, I would put him in there too as another option that you would be able to put on Booker or one of those guys or Beal or something. And it's cool that even outside of the guys that we would normally think of, that Jaylen Clark is, like he can serve that role as well. And when we do start thinking about the playoffs, not saying it's going to be against Phoenix, but when the level of play ramps up and you are playing teams that are having their 3 guys out there, some of the more talented, maybe OKC or something like that, you do need to have a lot of wing defenders and a lot of guys that are committed to doing it. And I would have said, like, coming into today, I would have been like, I'm not sure that this group really has that gear. Last season's team for sure. And it was just, I think there's something inspirational about that they did it, tonight. And now when I'm going to think about this game, I guess is what I'm saying, when they have another high level opponent on the schedule coming up, and being like, yeah, they have a depth of wing defenders, and they got the chance to show it tonight because Naz Reid and Dante DiVincenzo played. But that's a big thing to have in your back pocket for sure.
Yeah, I just was thinking too about a couple of years ago when they traded for Rudy. I think it was a Finch quote where he was like, we want teams, you got 2 bigs now, right? We want teams to respond to us.
Right.
I thought tonight was like the counter of that, where Phoenix tried a lot of stuff and the Wolves were like, okay, like we'll let you dictate the style of this fight, but then we'll just respond with, I mean, Kevin Durant was at center tonight with, I think there was a lineup that had to have had like Beal and Booker and KD, and then like Grayson Allen and Tyus Jones, like essentially 4 guards and KD. And they're like, okay, cool. We'll just throw all of our best wing defenders out there and play like Jaden at the 5 or whatever. And it worked really well. And again, for the handful of people that are like, well, that's why Micah Norris should be coaching this team. Micah did say post-game that he just did everything that Finch taught him to do, but it was just, they pulled all the right levers. And it did remind you, again, short-term, long-term, this team has no picks. They're all in. This is probably why fans sometimes get frustrated with the 8 starters, the 7-man rotation stuff. Jaylen Clark's game needs a lot of work, but he also has some skills that this team could use on a Wednesday night in Phoenix. This team is super deep. And we should have said this 30 minutes ago, but like, yeah, no Naz Reid tonight because half the league has the flu, but they don't have a big guy. They shifted down a little bit, played smaller. They had Mike and Rob and Jaylen out there at one point. Just an incredible performance by the kid who's still fighting his way back from an Achilles injury. And, I mean, this is just like a hot take, but like, I would imagine because of how he put his stamp on the game, defense, gets that offensive rebound for that little putback, right? Like just kind of busting his ass. I mean, he's probably jumped Josh in the rotation.
Well,
You know
because
what I mean? 'Cause, like-
that's what the Josh role is to play defense. You
Yeah,
know,
and be active. Yeah.
that's what they want him out there for. And to Josh's credit, he was doing it earlier in the year, and now there's been more breakdowns going on there. I don't know how that situation is going to play out, but now you're right. To your point, it's a reminder that if some of these guys that are at the fringe of the rotation are not delivering, there's other guys behind them. Terrence Shannon not healthy tonight, but guys like that that probably would have been Terrence Shannon Jr. Right? If
Absolutely. Yeah.
if he would have been healthy tonight. Let's move from Clark over to the defense over to the offensive side of the floor, and I thought. I mean, we talked about Ant a lot. Ant had a big game, really did take over in many ways. But having Julius Randle and that gear against the small ball Phoenix look, or just, when they're often having him be guarded by Royce O'Neal or, Grayson Allen or something like that, Julius Randle was a really important valve for the Wolves to have in this one. He had 28, 7, and 6. And he was 10 of 13 from 2-point range, because it was one of those situations where it's a plus matchup for Julius in isolation, to be able to make a move because he's bigger and stronger and finished. And I think we shouldn't not talk about Julius Randle in this game, because as big as Ant's energy was, as big as the perimeter defense was, they did need to score. And it did get to the point in the fourth quarter where I'm looking over to you. I'm like, they're up by 16 right now. They're going to for sure win this game. They got up because they taped offense to the defense that they were playing. And Julius drove that as much as anyone.
Ant finished with 33 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists. I don't know how you had this memorized, but Julius did finish with 28 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, 10 of 16 shooting.
I just looked it up on my phone when you were talking.
The difference between those two, Ant, 7 turnovers.
Yeah.
Julius Randle, 0 turnovers. And I thought he had 3 possessions specifically. I know 2 of them that you can remember, where he just was kind of on an island against Bradley Beal and was just kind of shut off his water.
Right.
And that's a good reminder for me as a fan that, you shouldn't always fire the coach because there was a bad game and he didn't play the guy you wanted, or he closed with the wrong rotation. You probably inversely shouldn't make long-term personnel decisions based on 1 or 2 good games. Yeah. But I would be lying to you if I said that this recent stretch of play has got to be marinating in the front office of all of a sudden it's starting to click a little bit. And again, long-term, does this make sense to make an Ant and Julius Randle pairing kind of what you're going to build off of? I don't know how, but I also woke up or found myself being I could see, this is for later, but I could see Julius Randle being here in March, because the way that now I think he has embraced a role, and maybe he's just doing it because it's contract year or whatever, but they don't win that game tonight again without him. I mean, there were moments where they do such a good job of throwing to at Ant, and he's doing such a much better job of getting off of it. But how many times did they just need Julius against a small team that's playing KD at center all of a sudden to just take a young guy or a small guy to the post and just too little him,
right,
put the ball in the basket? I mean, he was awesome.
Yeah, I mean that's what I've been saying with him. It's in a plus matchup, he is a good isolation option. He is a good option to play through, and it's kind of like the Rudy thing, when I talk about that, where it's the duck in. There's the big Randle and Gobert, and they got in a fight basically on the court about Randle not passing him the ball. Well, it was because Rudy was posting up Scotty Barnes, who's 6'8", and I think a good piece of growth from Rudy is he doesn't try and get those seals underneath the basket against guys who are tall, 6'8" or taller. Now he does it when it's Jamal Murray, who's rotated over onto him, or some other sort of guard, and it's okay to have certain matchups or certain situations where this move is a good move for you, or pursuing this action is a good action for you, and some that it isn't. And the same is true with Julius Randle. He's a very good isolation player, but an isolation player that plays through 2-point range and through the mid range a lot. So those are just lower percentage plays. So if it is Jalen Williams guarding him, that quickly becomes inefficient offense because Jalen Williams drops that from a 60% shot to maybe a 50%
absolutely.
shot.
Yep.
But it goes the other way too. And when it is something to be opportunistic with, like go to Julius over and over and over again. It'd be okay doing that if it is a plus matchup. And I think like if we were to turn back on like the Toronto game or any game back from that point of the season, and we looked at how Julius was playing then versus how he's playing now, I would say he's just being more smart with where he's being opportunistic. And do you remember that, like, there's a weird possession where they caught it at the like free throw line, and you kind of it was early in the shot clock. You could kind of tell he wanted to just like take an 18-footer, and like Durant was on him. And I think in New York, he for sure would have taken it. He got it, ended up like holding it for a little too long, kind of went down and spun around and hit like a turnaround shot. But you could almost see the gears turning in his head where he was like, I'm not supposed to just take this right now, right? And he didn't. And then he went on and made a shot. I just think those gears have been turning now for 45, 50 games, whatever it's been. And there's still games like Atlanta. That was rough from Randle. There's still these bad times, but the good games are going to become more frequent, or there's more games that can be good Randle games now, I feel like, than there was a month ago or 2 months ago. The question now is, and I'm sure a lot of people are thinking this when you hear me say this, is like, well, Dane, in the playoffs, it's going to be all
For sure. Yeah.
and in ways that's true, but that's part of what the playoffs are about too, is like hunting the right matchups and stuff like that. And maybe a team only has an Aaron Gordon and they got to choose, do I want to put Aaron Gordon on Anthony Edwards or do I want to put him on Julius Randle? I just think it's important that Randle seems to have made an adjustment to his game that doesn't preclude the possibility of him having a 28, 7, and 6 game. But he also doesn't need to pursue that if the matchup doesn't provide it. That's just happening more cleanly than it did earlier in the season, and that matters. That matters at least now, and maybe in the grand scheme of things. I feel like every time I say anything positive about Randle, it's like, oh, we got to trade him anyways. But I don't know. He might be on the team past the deadline, and it might be part of what they need in the playoffs. And it's just two things can be true, right? Like maybe they do need to trade him eventually, but while he's on the team, they need him to play this way, and he is playing this way.
And let's put a pin in that, because are we going to keep doing end segments where we talk about the trade deadline a little bit? Because I have some thoughts.
Yeah.
But I will say on this one, and this echoes what I said last week, and I stand by this take, that I'm a dumbass, and I will just cheer for this team kind of no matter what. But they have given you a quote or two every year that I always just laugh at the more I think about it. And the one that always stands out is when Finch and those guys like, we're going to unlock Rudy Gobert.
Yeah.
And as soon as they realized that was wrong and a bad take, things got better.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was thinking about all night tonight, because I'm sure Julius has had better games in a Timberwolves jersey, but I thought tonight was maybe his cleanest.
Clean. Yep.
Right. I mean, the turnover free box score helps, but I just thought he played a really clean game. And it reminded me of in Sacramento game 2 or 3 when Ant's like, we told Julius, we'll all fit around you. That was bullshit. Because I thought Julius tonight played 0 for 3 from 3, but I thought he played about as well as like Carl would in a situation like that, where every now and then he's got to be isolated against a guard, just hold your own, and then just make the right play. Mm-hmm. And he did that for all 36 minutes or whatever it was tonight. And they needed it because, as whatever you want to go now, but like you take Naz Reid out, first game he's missed all season, and you were kind of reminded, as much as I think, Jaden's now had 8 straight games with double-digit scoring, and holy shit, was I right to keep that stock? Well, the stock was tanking, but they need Julius, because you take Nas out and it's like this team does have so many fun defenders and guys that can hit threes, and Nikhil can be a great, spacer and all stuff, but they need like a second guy to really initiate offense. And without Nas Reed tonight, it was like, holy hell, especially in that first half. It's like, Julius, please save us. And I thought there was 2 stretches, second quarter and then sometime in the third, where it's like he did kind of save them.
And it was the times when they were playing good defense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then
he bought into it.
Yeah, and then so it's like you get a defensive stop, and then you kind of you're like walking it up the other way, and now you need to play half court offense, and he's part of the answer in the half court offense, and still I'd like to see him get out in transition a little bit more. I think we could critique his game as well, like he wasn't able to guard Durant like Cat was in the playoffs,
100%.
And they had to change that matchup, and they put Jaden onto Durant in the second half and started playing some more guards because then Jaden's no longer on Booker, or Ant, moves on to Booker, or Nikhil when he's out there, or Jaylen Clark when he was out there did as well. So it's just another example of how Julius is different than Karl and can't do a lot of the things Karl can do, but there are some things he can do. And I think tonight was an example of a game where he brought some things that he could do that I'm not sure Karl would as much have been able to, because I mean, we do remember what the Karl experience was when there was like a 6'5" guy on him that would try and get under him. Karl would flail. I mean, that was the stray voltage. Julius is pretty good at being quick and decisive and powerful and just like, get out of my way, I'm finishing. And at least when Julius is playing that way, those situations he can be better than Karl there.
I don't think Julius Randle in those first 30-40 games had a poke check steal at half line.
Totally.
That he had tonight, which again, it's one little play, a defensive play that leads to a thunderous Ant dunk. But again, if you ever go to these games, that dunk was worth way more than 2 points.
Right.
That was kind of a tone setter. And again, it was all started by a good play. And Julius Randle's still going to have those lapses where you screenshot it and he hasn't contested out on Kevin Durant, or he misses a guy. Again, it's kind of a theme for the best players on this team sometimes to fall asleep off ball, but
he's got to grow just like Ant does in a lot of the ways that we were talking about, of like, hey, you didn't do this here. Like, are you going to do it next time? Because if you don't, we're going to, like that. And I'm sure Finch is in his ear in the same way, but like Julius has growth. And I think he similarly has grown too. Sorry, cut you off.
Nope. I like watching him play tonight. And when we do the trade deadline talk a little bit, we're going to be, you're going to wake up tomorrow and you're going to listen to this pod and you're going to give it a nice 5-star rating, and you're going to say, I'm a week out from the trade deadline.
I don't care if you give it a 5-star rating.
Does this performing, you can't all of a sudden be like, we're going to change everything we were trying to do at the trade deadline because Julius played well in Phoenix.
No,
but what I have come to, again, being in Arizona this week and being around the team a little bit, is my eyes were open to this idea of when we did the spreadsheet pod, you and I think a lot of this falls on blame on me, but the drop dead due date is February 6th to figure this out. And I've been opened up to, that's not true. Is that actually it's, the end of June, right? Like you did a really good pod with Jay Sir this week that you can still drag this on and then figure out what you have with maybe some playoff reps, figure out what you have with this team now that has kind of found an identity, is playing for their coach, is nasty as hell,
or even just have more time of it being the off season to make a change, like,
and just see what else everyone is doing. But if Julius Randle's on the team on February 7th, a week from Friday, I don't think you need to immediately pivot to, oh my God, they're going to lose Nas and Nikhil. And I just had my kind of eyes open to that this week of like, Tim Conley has always been, since he got here, doing things on his time. The D'Lo trade at the peak of it, right? Like everyone thought they were going to extend him in the summer after they get rid of it. It's like, no, I'm going to wait. Then he pulls the trigger. There is a little more time for this to be figured out and set up for, again, because it's all about resetting the table for Anthony Edwards when he enters his prime. And this is his gap year of learning how to be a leader and what to say post-game and what maybe not to say post-game. Julius Randle might be on this team and try to help them win games now and still not be a member of the team next year.
we're gonna try and do like a little deadline sort of segment on every episode until the deadline hits. And I said this to you, and I was like, this isn't a sexy one, but like, what if we do one that is on the what are the odds that they do nothing at the deadline? And if you want to go look at fake Julius Randle trades, you can listen to the pod that Kyle and I did last week. But if we are exploring the deadline landscape completely, one option that we do need to consider is that they just don't do anything or nothing of real like material consequence. Maybe they like dump a salary of a bench player to save some tax money. And what when I sent that to you was because Finch gave this answer pregame, and this was before the Atlanta game, but I wanted to save it and play it on this episode. It just kind of sounds like, and I don't know, everyone, you can be the judge, listening to yourself, but it sounded pretty genuine to me from Finch that, they kind of are operating under the assumption that they are going to be doing nothing. Here's Finch again. This came before the Atlanta game on Monday.
Yeah, I mean, some of that question's obviously better answered by Tim. Of course, we talk all the time, but there's not a lot to talk about. I think there's a lot of belief in this team internally. We think that the best solutions for ourselves are internal, I'm sure they're active in terms of being on the phones, taking or making some calls, but I don't think that there's an urgency around anything right now. I think there's a probably more of a optimism about what we have here.
So I think it's saying there's not an urgency. There's more of a optimism about what they have here, and it's like I feel like that's the message that I've been trying to like share when we've been doing these these deadline podcasts or talking about them. And I'm just saying, I'm not saying it's my opinion. I'm not saying it's necessarily what I would do, but the sense that I've been getting for a while now is that they do have an optimism about what is going to come. I mean, Finch had that line like a month ago. He's like, we've realized is it's just going to take a while for the cake to bake. And I don't think the cake is fully baked, but it's not like a month ago where if you put the knife in there to test it, you're getting all the batter out from the middle. Like there's some of this is coming together. And I think the most important thing is it's like, this seems to be like the cake that they want to bake, like, I don't think they want to make some sort of big change right now, unless they had to, because there's like some deal they can't pass up, or there's a salary cap flexibility path that opens up that they, they're like, hey, we can't miss this. It kind of honestly reminds me of the Carl.
Right.
At the end of the summer, there was always the lingering like, well, they are going to probably need to get off of Carl's contract at some point due to the second apron stuff, but it just did kind of feel like nothing was going to come together. Then of course something did come together, but that kind of makes my point of like, it was Randle and DiVincenzo came together and they didn't think they were going to be able to get, Dante DiVincenzo in that deal and also have this opportunity to get off of some money with Randle's contract being less money and ending sooner. Like if something like that comes up, sure, they would pull the trigger. I think like they did in the fall, right before media day, but I just do not get the sense that they are going to make a move just like I've said, they're not going to make a quote unquote addition by subtraction move, or I would be very surprised if they did.
Someone with the team told me yesterday that they don't love the term gap year that I've been using. And they said that because they go, we don't want Ant to think that he can take a year off. Kind of like he said earlier in those quotes about how
kind of like the Atlanta game.
Yeah, right. Where it's like, if I'm going to take anything off, I should take plays off on offense. I shouldn't take plays on defense. And again, it's all about Anthony Edwards. Everything that goes on with the Minnesota Timberwolves now, from ownership down to the ball boys and girls, is all about Anthony Edwards. But I kind of get that. And while I still stand by the idea of resetting everything and maybe taking a step back so that next year you can take 2 steps forward, I also would be lying to myself if I didn't say that the head coach was brought in here in the middle of the night, late on a Sunday, 3-4 years ago, because this franchise never fucking wins basketball games. And to build a culture, you kind of got to do what they do. And it's like, we don't rest guys. We don't take nights off. And I say all of that to say with this Julius Randle thing, I mean, yes, the addition by subtraction thing now to me is like out the window. Like this team might be finding something. And again, maybe it's a hot week of basketball. And Julius has been compared to a lot, not just because they're left-handed, but to like D'Angelo Russell. And I remember with D'Angelo Russell when he was with the Lakers, like finished that season really well. And they're like, well, we got to bring him back. And like that was kind of a mistake. So I just think this all leads to a more complicated cake to bake. But I don't know. I mean, I would imagine every guy in that locker room wakes up tomorrow, and I mean, God forbid if they can beat Utah and kind of keep this thing rolling, that they'll wake up Friday morning if they beat Utah, and they're going to be in the top 6 in the West. And they're going to look around and say, AD's out for the Lakers. Look, like all this stuff. It's like, why can't we?
And more importantly, like internally, they got something going.
Yeah.
Like it feels like it's something believable that is. That's what I felt like in the locker room, right? Tonight when we're in there, like a sense that
those guys couldn't wait to play basketball again.
Yeah.
And like, again, the Denver game, maybe it was just one thing, but like they bullied that team and they put Denver into a kind of a tailspin. Tonight against Phoenix, like they forced Phoenix to be like, hey, we might not have our shit figured out, but you definitely don't have your shit figured out. And that's kind of been their energy against some of these good teams. And again, everyone listening to this, I'm well aware that they could just drop some of these games. But in terms of a trade deadline that is now a week away, I still stand by a lot of the things that I believe long-term on this. And it's very complicated, but I've come to the idea that maybe this is just what it looks like for the rest of this season.
Right.
Because whenever this thing ends, whether it be, first round of the playoffs, a play-in, hell, game 82, I've been educated, and you helped me with this, that there's still a window of time to still continue to reset everything leading up to the draft. I mean, there's time to make transactions, including Julius Randle or maybe that Detroit pick, before you have to worry about immediately being like, well, now Naz Reid is out or
Right.
Nickeil Alexander-Walker is out.
Yeah, and I think and maybe part of it is, Dante's been out, so it just doesn't feel to me like Julius Randle right now, even when he's not playing well, is like even in the minutes or the games where he isn't playing well, is like cannibalizing something. Right? It doesn't.
I don't think that, because you've seen the games where he doesn't close or he plays a season low amount of minutes. Like,
well, you had a good point when we were sitting at, it was the first half when things were a little bit rougher. I think this might have been right
Panda,
after. Yeah, this was right after Josh Minot got subbed out of there, and you were like, well, aren't these the guys who would be playing if Julius Randle was traded, and Naz Reid moved into the starting lineup, and that has been, as I've tried to kind of get off of my own position in my head of like, I think they ultimately need to, move on from Randle and be like, I think they might probably keep Randle at least for a while. What are the reasons for that? And one I don't think we talk about enough is that if you remove Julius Randle, sure, Naz Reid becomes the starter, but then who becomes Naz Reid? And we learned today it's like Josh Minot and Jaylen Clark and all that. And, Jaylen Clark
played really well tonight.
Yeah.
But at every single second he was on the court, he was the 5th best Timberwolves player.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And it's like, you take Julius Randle out of this and Naz gets hurt or something, or like, God forbid he's even healthy, but like, you can't play both. You can't play Leonard Miller and Jaylen Clark out there at the same time. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because then we're back to the same bullshit about how Ant has no spacing. He has no one around him to help. So I'm with you. Like, it's so much fun to see a young guy come in and pop. We haven't talked much about Rob. I thought he played pretty well again tonight. But again, with like, I don't know how you watch that game and everything we just talked about with having wing defenders and reacting to what Phoenix did and saying, we're going to beat you however you want to play. It just wasn't a night that they needed the 20-year-old. And I'm still the guy that is like, hey, start Rob Dillingham. But they didn't need Rob tonight. They needed Jaylen Clark more than they needed Rob. And tomorrow night, they might need way more Rob and Jaylen Clark than being street clothes or whatever. So they have a lot of options, but that was
is there a sentiment of that going on? Like Rob Dillingham didn't play enough tonight? Sorry, I don't know how many minutes.
Just wanted to like check your mentions.
No.
And with
14 minutes and 39 seconds. Okay, I guess in my mind it felt like it was.
And I don't think Rob played bad, by the way. Like,
yeah,
he had that crazy little floater. He had that behind the back pass. I mean, he just brings
that was fun.
All the same stuff we've been talking about. He brings zest and juice and shiftiness. but they just didn't really need him as much tonight. And tomorrow night they might need him 3x. But again, it was just
they're going to need him while Dante's out. Period.
Yeah, but to the Julius thing, it was just this was the first game of the entire post-Cat era that Naz Reid didn't play. And it was kind of an eye-opener to me of when you take him out, and now we've figured out that Jaden is completely a different player. I mean, he's actually kind of more of a big now, but they need that creation, that facilitation. I mean, Mike Conley played tonight. I don't think he was super impactful, but I don't know. It's going to be a really, really interesting next 7 or 8 days because, again, and this ties still into like ownership and like who's making all the calls. The franchise is still in a very, very interesting spot, but I don't think the be-all, end-all deadline is February 6th at 3 p.m. Eastern time.
Yeah, and you're right. I guess I don't remember exactly how we framed that when we did the salary cap.
I think we
podcast.
said I said that if Julius Randle is still here, that means you're definitely going to lose at least one of these guys. And it's like, no, because you can still trade him on draft night, right?
Yeah, what we were saying is if he's on the roster for the new
fiscal NBA year.
Yes, which starts, July 1st, and when all of the off season happens and the Shams is breaking all the news, like he's on the team at that point, then yeah, like he'll be locked in for if he'd opted into the player option, locked into the 31 million, and there will be an opportunity cost to that. Absolutely. But it's also possible that he is, traded then in July. And I would say, and I don't know, maybe this will age poorly and, next week he gets moved. I don't know. It's like, everyone's like, what are they going to do? I'm like, I don't know. Nobody knows. They're not saying these things because I think they're waiting to see how the market all, plays out. But I would guess that if he's traded in July. That maybe he's opted into his new contract and, or like sometimes how like those deals like happen on draft night and then the guy like can't play for the team in summer league because they're it's just like weird order of operations. But I guess point being, the summer, unless they have a real leverage point with like Miami and in some sort of way in the Jimmy Butler multiple team trade. Just my opinion of looking at the salary cap or the trade landscape of the league. That just that's what just makes most sense to me at 1 a.m. on.
But the biggest change since you put up Microsoft Excel on the screen for an hour was that this team has now, and again, if I eat healthy for a week, that doesn't mean I'm a health coach, right? So they played one good week of basketball against some really like a Denver team that was really coming along and a Phoenix team that had found some stuff by, removing guys from the starting lineup. And so you don't just want to say like, hey, this is a contender again, like Western Conference Finals. But I also think you'd be lying to yourself if you didn't think that this team has a far better chance to make a run than it did a week or two ago. And that now factors into this because
how are you defining run right now? Like what I'm just like curious, like what in your head is run?
I think when we did the spreadsheet podcast, I was like, there's no way this team wins the first round playoff.
Yeah. So the run would be looking good in the playoffs.
And again, like we don't need to do this again, but like, game 7, Denver, they were down 20. And if they don't come back in that's it. And we probably have a different perspective on last season. So I just think this front office, and especially this coach that came in here to do one thing really, and that's win games and change the culture. And a player who, in Anthony Edwards, who still, and he's admitting it, I still take some plays off. I still they're trying to get less and less of that. If they move Julius within the next week, I don't think you can do it in a way that's like, all right, Leonard Miller, 25 minutes a game.
No way. Yeah.
Right. And that's nothing against Leonard Miller, but like they have now built a new layer of like competitiveness. I mean, they played their asses off tonight. So that's why I'm coming around to the idea of maybe they just say, look around in the West. Where's Luka right? I mean, there's a lot of guys hurt and like OKC, like, are they for real? They haven't done in the playoffs yet. Like, I don't know if that's valid, but I also don't think it's necessarily like this fan take or optimism. It's what the players felt in the locker room tonight.
Right.
They believe now that they might have found a little something and that when a guy goes down, you don't have Dante, here comes Rob, and he can fend for himself.
Right.
You don't have Nas. Here comes Jaylen Clark out of the woodwork, and he can defend. So it's going to be a fascinating week. And like I said, you're as plugged in as anyone covering any team in the league, but this front office is tight-lipped. So no one has any idea what they're going to do in it. Are they going to get the right offer that they just blow them away and say, we just have to take another step back and get bounced in the play-in? Or do they just stand pat and say, let's just see how far we can go? Let's see if another somewhat deep playoff run with all the right dominoes leads us to something, and then we'll figure it out in June.
I think it's probably a good place for us to wrap this. We want to do some prize picks. You got some
Just
Super Bowl ones?
Quick, give me
Yeah.
10 seconds.
Yeah. Or I was going to say,
This
do
is
you want
a
anything
follow-up
else?
for like my wife, my mom, like 6 listeners. How was your Waymo experience?
My Waymo experience. I was going to get.
You know what it is now.
Yes, I was going to get dinner with somebody from the team last night, and I it was through Uber. That was
Right,
the
that's what's
craziest
crazy. It's
thing.
scary. Be
It was
careful out there.
Yeah, I was like, it just showed up. My Uber was a Waymo. I'm like, all right, I guess I'm getting into this. And I immediately texted you. I said, I'm in a Waymo. The thing was, it was a long ride. It wasn't like a 5 minute. It went to Scottsdale.
Yeah,
And so I was like, man, this is like just 22 minutes. Me and Siri here like, in the car.
What you learned is every good ride needs a driver. Right? Because I was in a Waymo today and I was frightened for my life. When you
I
look
just
out
looked at my phone
and the
and
car is
pretended it
driving
wasn't
and there's
happening.
no one in there, and you're like, this is one last thing, because he did, in terms of Chris Finch, got ejected tonight, as we've talked about ad nauseum. Also, Jaden McDaniels got ejected.
Yeah.
And I thought that was awesome because he is my favorite player, and he has been the guy pulling guys out of scuffles lately.
Yep.
He had just real nasty intentions tonight, putting that finger in Devin Booker's face. But I just wanted to bring this up because Isaiah Stewart, his former teammate at Washington, also got ejected tonight for the Pistons. And I just can't imagine what it was like hanging out with those guys at college. Like just two bad guys. But anyway, prize picks.
Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. And Kyle, do you have a couple from the Super Bowl? I think that's already listed on there at Prize Picks. The one we for sure want to hit is they have a free square where if Patrick Mahomes throws for a single passing yard, you check that box. What other ones do you have that you liked?
Well, I was just going to do every Amen Thompson over for tomorrow against the Grizzlies, but I guess you want me to do football.
You can do that too.
The Saquon Barkley number is 114.5.
Yeah, you were right on that last week. 130.
Yeah. But actually, I think in that game, he busted that 60-yarder and then didn't hit the over because the game script kind of got away. So I just think in this game, Chiefs, Eagles, I guess apparently no one's going to watch it, even though it's the two best teams in the league. I think he's going to go less than, because I just think there's not going to be, it's going to be a weird game. Each team might only have like 5 or 6 possessions. It's going to be a real grind out, in my opinion. So I said less than 114.5 rushing yards. And then also Xavier Worthy, this is like my favorite one, more than 6.5 rushing yards. They run those couple plays for him every time, and he always picks up positive yardage. So Xavier Worthy, more than 6.5 rushing yards. Saquon slightly under his really big number for a Super Bowl.
I wanted to go more than on Dallas Goedert. I don't have his receptions one up there. I kind of like that. I just feel like he's going to definitely be involved. And sometimes I feel like what I like to do with these is like, if it's a guy that I feel like is going to be heavily involved, rather than like doing more than on the yardage total, you can do like targets.
Oh yeah.
Or receptions. I don't have that up there right now, but his number for receiving yards is 52.5. So if you're looking right here, we have the Patrick Mahomes free square. Kyle's less than 114.5 rushing yards for Saquon Barkley, more than 6.5 rushing yards for Xavier Worthy, and more than 52.5 receiving yards for Dallas Goedert. What would that do here? That would be 10-1. Why can't I see it on here? Is this different? 9.5-1 on this one. I think a 4-leg one is a nice way to be able to do it. And you can do flex plays with that as well. But check that out for the Super Bowl. We'll be back. We'll show you some other ones that we like next week as well when we have Jace and others on. It's prizepicks.com or the Prize Picks app. You can use the promo code Dane. if you don't already have an account, maybe you do for the Super Bowl, even if it's just for the Super Bowl, like, hey, I want to have some stuff going on for the game. Try out Prize Picks. It's really fun. And then even if, you're just watching a random TNT NBA game, they have the live ones going, like that could be fun too. And it doesn't have to be for a lot of money. You can do these lineups for $5. They have a bunch of promotions. It's meant to be something. It's daily fantasy. It's meant to be something that's fun. I like to think of it as like an extension of fantasy football season or fantasy basketball season. Do we have anything else we need to hit? We hit the Waymo experience, all those sort of things. We're good.
I just want to say again, like, I appreciate this has been a tough year. I think just on the court, off the court, like it's been a tough team to follow. I mean, I think even people that are with the team, they're like, this hasn't been as fun as last year.
Right.
And maybe it's just because I'm here tonight or whatever, but I really come away with this thinking between that Denver game, I know it's sandwiched in between this shit sandwich of the Hawks game, but this might be a team that's really starting to trend up, whether it be at the right time, a week before the trade deadline. They're trying to figure this out. But if you've hung around long enough, I mean, it's going to get really exciting coming up because you got a trade deadline in a week. You got a hard cap deadline of when this ownership arbitration thing should be figured out. And then from there, you got a team that might start be playing really good basketball that you're going to enjoy watching. So appreciate everyone.
Even if it's not the type of basketball that makes you believe they can win the championship, like,
yeah, I know
that doesn't need to be the bar, right? I mean, whatever. I'm not saying to anybody what to do, but like, I do think it's one of those things where if you checked out on this team because you're really out on just the whole like Julius Randle or the idea of cap for Julius Randle. And then the Wolves do go to the playoffs and, as you said, like go on a run and it's, maybe they go to the second round or something like that. I think it's one of those things that you would regret, not having, not having just died on that. I don't want Julius Randle to be on the team hill. And like I've said, I've talked about it on the pod and I talked about it today. Like once you start like opening up the possibility that there's redeeming qualities to Julius Randle. Once you open up your mind to that, you end up kind of like finding more of them. And it doesn't mean you have to put aside or delete the things that bother you about his game or that you think are problematic about him as a player or as maybe a blocker for Naz Reid's future. All of those fears and concerns are warranted. I just think like highlighting his redeeming qualities are also warranted as well. And there's been more of those lately. And I thought tonight was one of those as well. So we'll see what happens with the trade deadline. I certainly don't know, but it's always a fun time to not just be following the Wolves, but the league at large. I appreciate you. I know you got a golf early in the morning.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you doing this late after the game, listeners. I appreciate you rolling with our kind of cockeyed outline to this whole thing. But yeah, he's Kyle Theige. You can follow him on Twitter at Kyle Theige. I'm Dane at DaneMooreNBA. Next up will be me and Britt Robson on Friday morning after the Utah game, where we'll talk about the Utah game. But I'm sure Britt and I will dig into this Phoenix game a lot more. I have a lot more clips and stuff from the locker room. Sorry, it's just while we're doing it live, it was hard to play that, but we'll get to some more of that on the Friday show with Britt. Until then, he's Kyle. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.